Good evening and welcome. Can everybody hear okay? Good. I am very excited to see so many people here. This has been a 3-week event that we've been planning. And when I first proposed this at a faculty meeting after school, a lot of people thought, boy, can we really pull this together in 3 weeks? And I said, absolutely. And the good thing when this is over, you won't get any more phone calls from your mind. So that's positive. Hopefully everybody got a lime green wristband. We were passing those out at the door. And if you notice on there, those lime green wristbands say ready, set, go. SET standing for Saving Education Together. We're all here tonight not because this is a student fight. It's not a teacher fight. It's not the administrators, the board, the community members. This is the entire educational community coming together because we're displeased with some of the governor's proposals for education and the negative impacts that that's going to have on our school. Before we go any further, I would like to ask people to mute your cell phones. And I need to remind you, because we do have a pretty packed house, there's an emergency exit down here. There's emergency exits across the back, 6 of them. If you've ever had to evacuate, please head right to an emergency exit. I would also like to welcome our neighbors from Richfield Springs. I see them. I believe we have friends here tonight from Sharon Springs. Superintendent from the Evanston School District here. We have Mr. Joseph Yelich, the Oneonta City School Superintendent. And please help me if there are other groups or communities here that I have not mentioned. And of course, we have Cherry Valley and Springfield here as well. So again, welcome. We have an amazing evening planned for you, and I want to make sure people understand the reason for coming together is positive. While we're displeased with some of the things that we're hearing and the effects that that can have on us, this is not meant to be a negative slant or to bash our governor. Certainly opinions will come out, and certainly some frustration will come out, and that should come out. We are videotaping this with the intention of sending this off to the legislators. I did just get a text from Senator Seward. He is coming. He will not be here till about 7, which actually should be towards the end of our program, so we will have some words from Senator Seward. Assemblyman Lopez is trying to come. I'm afraid that because they're in session right now, which actually should be a good thing, he might not be able to make it. And at the conclusion of this, if you have specific questions for me, certainly email or call. I'm in all day tomorrow, and those of you who don't know, I'm Superintendent of Schools. I've been here about a year and a half, and this is the most excitement and buzz I've heard since I've been here in the hallways. People feel the need to come together as one, because this is a battle that can be won by grassroots movements like this. So with your support, and at the end you will leave with a packet of addresses and information and websites and telephone numbers, please reach out to the legislation. Please reach out to Albany, because we can't win this as one, as individuals. So again, thank you very much for coming. And before I go any further, I would like to call up the following students to lead us in the pledge. Rebecca Phillips, Jalen Jakeway, Hope Lowry, Sarah Lewis, Mia Horvath, Jessica Lundy, and Kristen Peter. On my front, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Tonight I'd like my portion to talk about three things which I'm sure you've heard a lot about in the news as of late. The gap elimination, I get a lot of questions about that. The gap elimination adjustment, or GEA, was put into place in 2010 by Governor Cuomo to close a $10 billion gap. With that being said, their intent, the state's intent, was to give districts less money, hold back some aid to districts to close this $10 billion gap. 5 years into the gap elimination adjustment, the Cherry Valley-Springfield School District has lost $2.4 million, or roughly $4,000 per student that we could be using to further educate our children. There's been a lot of push to get rid of the gap elimination adjustment. We've written letters to Senator Seward and Assemblyman Lopez, McGee, Santa Barbara, Tenney, telling them how important this money is to us. This year alone, in our school budget, we are slated to lose $200,000, again, to gap elimination adjustment. So if you see something about that in the news, you'll know that that has hurt every district. And of course, we're hearing that that gap has been closed and there's a budget surplus, but yet this bleeding still continues. So my hope is that we will hear very shortly within the next week that the gap elimination adjustment is going away. That will put $200,000 back in the Cherry Valley-Springfield school budget.
It's been something that's been very detrimental to all districts. So we're hoping that we have good news, and possibly Senator Seward will speak a little bit about that when he gets here later on. The second thing I'd like to talk about is our school budget. I've been trying since January to balance our school budget, and they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, I'll be the first to admit I'm completely insane then, because as I push the numbers, there's $500,000 in the hole right now to balancing the school budget. It's negative $493,000 to be exact. So we depend highly on state aid. We rely heavily on Albany to give us about $8 million a year in state aid. And you've probably also heard the governor has put a freeze on aid runs. We as superintendents are charged with balancing the school budget. We don't know our aid runs from Albany. It's very difficult to balance a school budget when you don't know what you're getting from the state. Our school budget is roughly $13 million. $5 million comes in the form of revenue from taxes. $8 million comes from New York State. So what we've put together is what is called a flat budget, or a rollover budget. We took last year's budget. Basically, we had to figure in cost for health insurance, increases, and raises, and that's about what the budget is. We're looking at a $13,080,000 budget, a little higher than last year. Again, we don't know what aid is in the state. So it's important, and I think you've probably heard that the governor has frozen aid unless he gets some of the items on his agenda passed. We're hoping to find out very shortly how much money we'll be getting from the state so that we can put a school budget together for voters in May. I also wanted to talk about opting out. That seems to be the huge topic in the news, students opting out of state testing. And what I need to say is that as a school, we have to give the New York State test. That's a federal regulation. We don't have a choice in that. No school staff member can encourage children to opt out or say something negative about the state test in public. That is our responsibility as educators. We have to do that. We will be offering the New York State tests here at Cherry Valley-Springfield for students in grades 3 through 8, and there will be no negative consequence for your child if you have your child refuse. But please understand, they will be doing something in a separate location, which will be an academic activity. We won't be showing Frozen or other movies that are fun. It's not fun. We have to give the New York State tests. With that being said, it's your right as a parent to opt your child out or have them refuse. So I would ask you, if you are opting your children out of the state test, to please put it in writing so that we know ahead of time how many students we have to accommodate that won't be taking the state test on those days. And again, we as educators cannot include those in the public. We have to give those state tests. That's a federal mandate. And we are school officials, so you as parents have different rights with that because your children obviously are charged with taking them. But if you do want to refuse, that is your right, and you certainly can do that. But please put it in writing, and we won't take phone calls on the day of the state test because we need to come up with a separate location for your children. So that's a big piece. I know it's making news. I know you have a lot of questions, and we certainly have answers for you. Something that we talked about yesterday at the superintendent's meeting, if a child takes the New York State test on day 1 and simply puts their name on that test, it has to be stored. So that's something that's, something to consider. And again, I cannot encourage you to opt out. I have to provide those tests for your children. We will be giving those tests. It's your right as a parent to refuse those. So again, welcome to Cherry Valley-Springfield. I'm excited to see everybody here. The thought of bringing everybody together in a positive arena for a positive reason is great. And I love seeing so many people here. The students are excited. They've got some things prepared for you. You can see the posters hung around the school. There's a lot of passion and there's a lot of support for this CVS school district and our neighboring districts. I'm hoping the governor understands that after tonight. So again, thank you for coming. I would like to call up Brian Hunt, the Evanston Central School Superintendent, who will be talking to you about